So now, when the bird came out, how did the bird even? How did you get that? I mean, it's a different song. How did you come up with the bird? The bird is the word.
Well, as time went on, we spread out as far as our venues are concerned, and we were playing a place called Woodley's Country Dam. And Woodley's was in Amory, Wisconsin. And they drew big crowds there. And I think we were going to play there on Saturday, but we came there on Friday because we could stay at their motel. They had a place above the dam. There was a river that ran right next to the ballroom. They used to have water shows there, And anyway, we could stay up on top of that dam. You could hear the water running all night long. Good way to go to sleep, listening to this water run. But that night, on Friday night, the night before we were going to play there was a band called the Sorensen Brothers that were there. And that band was from California, so we thought, boy, we've got to see that. And so they did this song. It was Papa Oo Mau Mau, I guess is what they called it. And they did the song. We had never heard it before. In fact, we had never heard the Rivingtons version of that song. Mm-hmm. We had no idea. But the more we listened to that, we started getting this idea it would be, what a song. I mean, it's a crazy song. And the bird. We were a surf band. We were trying to be a surf band because we had come back from California. And I bought every Dick Dale album there was to learn surf music. And, we saw the Chantays out there at the Rendezvous Ballroom. And I thought that was the big time. And this is in 62. And they were driving new cars. And, we saw the Righteous Brothers at the Rendezvous Ballroom the first time we saw them. They were, by the way, the first duo I've ever seen scream in harmony. They could do that. I've never seen anybody else do that. So anyway, we went out there and brought all the surf music back, and we were learning it. So with the bird, this song, it seemed that we could make kind of a surf song out of that. So in the dressing room at a place called I'm trying to remember, and you can edit this thing too. But back then we were Chubb's Ballroom. That's what I'm looking for. Chubb's Ballroom. Chubb's Ballroom was a place, very, very popular spot, and we were in the back room at Chubb's Ballroom, and we started fooling around with that song. Steve War, who was our drummer, came up with this crazy voice, and we thought, man, never heard anything like that. And so he started doing, Papa Oo Mau Mau, Papa Oo Mau Mau. He was doing this, the bird is the word. Started going through this, and so we had a guitar in there without an amplifier, and everybody's heard about the bird. And so he started doing this in the key of E, and let's do it. It was so crazy. We had a couple hours before we were going to play, and he said, so I don't know how long this is going to go, but when I want to change keys, I'll just nod, because we didn't know where the song was going to go. And so we never rehearsed it, but I'd played it on the guitar when he was singing it. Came out and did it, and the DJ at the time was Bill Deal at this particular record hop. That's what they called him. And he was the Wizard of the Wax, the Deacon of the Discs, they called him. Purveyor of whatever, he would call himself.
With WDGY.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big
Wonderful Ouija.
Wonderful
That's what they call it, Wonderful Ouija. And anyway, Bill was there, and he would throw records out at the crowd, and he was just going crazy. So we did this song, and the crowd went absolutely nuts. And he said, you got to do it again. So we played it again, ended up doing it 3 times.
Wow.
Crowd loved it, and he said, you should record that song. That's a hit. And he said, that's the craziest song I've ever heard. So we went in the studio in the basement of Nickel Lake Record Store, went downstairs, and we recorded that, and it was 3.5 minutes long. And we played it for Bill, and he said, it's too long, it's got to be 2.5 minutes. 3.5 minutes is way too long. So we went then to a real studio. We went over to K Bank and paid for the session. And we sat around in a circle because you couldn't overdub that or anything. It had to be done live. So we were out in front of Steve and played that song and recorded it. A couple of takes. I don't think it was more than 2 or 3 takes. That was it. Yeah, that's the one we want. So we brought it over to Bill on an acetate. That's what they called it. You know, they would record it on a plastic disc.
Mm-hmm.
Brought it over to him, and he said, I've got to put that on the air. No, they'd never do that today.
Right.
I mean, no way they would do that today. So put it on the air against Louie Louie, as a matter of fact. And it won. And Louie Louie turned out to be a huge hit. So it was on its way. There was Heiliger Brothers here in town where they had a big pressing plant. George Garrett, who owned Nickel Lake Records, he said, well, you know, I'll be your manager. Of course, we were stupid. We were 20 years old. Yeah, sure, George. So he became our manager on the spot. Made a deal with Heiligers, and they started pressing these records. It started selling like crazy, and it was on its way to #1, you know. And
so
totally changed our lives.
What year was that? And that was in 63?
63.
63. So she was on her way. So what happened? So the Bird's on its way to #1.
Yeah.
And now, did it reach #1?
And some charts it did.
Okay.
In Cashbox, it reached #2. In Billboard, #4.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Beatles had arrived.
The Beatles.
And the only thing that was above it was I Want to Hold Your Hand, and I think there were 3 Beatles songs above it, and then there was Surfin' Bird.
Surfin' Bird. So when Surfin' Bird came out like that, that had to have changed the Trashmen's life. I mean, what happened after the Trashmen? After the Surfin' Bird went on?
Well, we made more money.
And that was a good thing.
That was good. There was a guy that was a booking agent in Laverne, Minnesota. His name was Jimmy Thomas, and he turned out to be a great guy. He was just for us turned out to be wonderful. Jimmy was a booking agent, and Jimmy had a big dance band back in the 40s and 50s. So he wanted to book us for 10 days. So George, being our manager, he sold us for $250 a day for 10 days. So we went out for 10 days, but we did so well playing armories, you know, around the state. Did so well, he paid us $500 a night.
Wow.
Which was, you know, for us, it was big money. So Jimmy became our booking agent. George was our agent for a period of time, but it didn't last that long. He had his own interest in mind, and maybe not ours as much as he should have. But at any rate, you know, he wasn't working with us anymore, and you know, we recorded a number of albums after the Surfin' Bird album. And that, by the way, we recorded after we did Surfin' Bird. We should digress a little bit, I think, go back, because when we did Surfin' Bird, we needed a B-side to the record.
That was 45s back then.
Yeah, it was a B-side, and we needed it. I called Larry LaPole, who was a friend of ours, and he had been writing songs. He was a songwriter, and we'd been going in recordings, doing background music for him on some of his recordings that he had. We said we needed a surf song, and we needed it by tomorrow. And so he wrote King of the Surf, which turned out to be one of the, I think, best surf songs ever written. He wrote it over his lunch hour. And we recorded it the next day, and they put it out as a single. They said we need an album now. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we got him going, and he wrote some songs. We wrote some ourselves, and within a couple of weeks, the album was done. And by the way, back then, you recorded an album in a couple of days. It wasn't a couple of days for a music track.
Wow.
The whole album was done in a couple of days.
I think you have, and that's a copy right there.
I
Can
do.
we show the people out there that?
See if I can reach that. Here we go.
Can you reach that there and show them?
That is the first album,
That's the first
right
album,
there.
Surfing Bird.
Surfing Bird album.
Yeah.
That's an original copy, and Tube City was on there, and we had to call it Tube City because it's a surfing word. A tube comes down
Yeah.
with a big wave, and My Woody was a song that Larry wrote. Cuck was a song that we heard by a group called the Astronauts. We liked that song, and we were playing it, so we decided to record it. Loved Buddy Holly,
Yeah.
so we recorded it so easy. And Malagueña, we did it just because we needed another song, so we made a surf song out of Malagueña. And just kind of a passing note, too. Dick Dale, I talked to Dick Dale, and he was playing Malagueña with a song called Miserloo, which we recorded on this album.
Yeah.
And he heard that song, and he said, I think that'd go great with Miserloo. And so he took our idea from Malagueña and put it on Miserloo.
Well, what made you take and be a surf band, and what inspired you to be into the surf music?
I know, being a landlocked band in Minnesota.
Yeah.
We did it because we liked surf music, and nobody else was playing it. I mean, here in town, people were playing Chuck Berry. They were playing, any of the songs back in the day, the bubblegum songs. They were doing Bobby V's stuff. I mean, it was anything that was top 40 is what they were doing. And but nobody was doing surf music. So we started playing surf music with lots of reverb on it. Nobody was using reverb like that. So we did. And I put some big strings on the guitar, and we started playing surf music. We learned a bunch of surf songs. The Dick Dale Stomp we were doing, and of course Miserloo, and those songs.
Well, you wrote some songs too, right? For the Surfing Bird album? Or?
Yeah, we did, because we needed like 3 more songs. And so on the spot in the studio, we just put together some instrumentals.
Okay.
And you got to put a name on them. So we put a name on them, and what really is flattering is that we went over to Europe, and bands over in Europe were playing those songs that we wrote in the studio. And Bad News, they were playing Bad News. It was, for us, it was amazing that these bands picked up on that surf music. And there were a lot of surf bands that showed up in different parts of the world then.